Hi everyone, welcome back to my SQL placement series. In the previous video, we learned about the group by clause, its syntax and the order of execution and also the example queries. Now once we use the group by clause, the data is divided into groups. So the next question is, how do we filter these groups? So in this video, we are going to learn an important clause called having clause. We will understand what is having clause, why it is used, its syntax, and the order of execution. So, guys, let's get started. Now, before jumping into having clause, let's first understand why we actually need it. We already know that where clause is used to filter the records. That is, it works on rows and filter data row by row. But when we use the group by clause, SQL first creates group of rows. Once groups are created, where clause cannot be used to filter those groups. So to filter grouped data, SQL provides a separate clause called having. Now we will understand having clause with these steps. First one is having clause works group by group. This means having clause does not check data row by row. Once we apply group by, SQL combines rows into groups. Now having clause checks each group as a single unit and decides whether that group should be included or not. Second point, having clause is always written after group by. Now you will ask why? Because having clause works only on groups, guys. If groups are not created, then there is nothing for having clause to filter, right? So first SQL creates groups using group by, and only after that having clause is applied. That's why having is written after group by, not before. Now coming to the third point, in having clause we write conditions on groups. This means the condition inside having is applied to the entire group, not to individual rows. We are not checking a single record. Instead, we are checking the result of a group. So guys, having clause always contains group level conditions, not row level conditions. Fourth point is having clause cannot be used without group by. Guys, this is very important. Please listen carefully. Having clause exists only for grouped data. If there is no group by, then there will be no groups. And if there are no groups, having clause has no meaning. Last point, in having clause, we can use MRF functions like count, sum, average, min, and max. MRF works on multiple rows and give one result per group. We have count, sum, average, min, and max functions which make sense only after grouping. So they are commonly used inside the having clause. And guys, this is one of the reasons why having clause works on groups, not on rows. And guys, please remember this, where clause is used to filter the rows, whereas having clause filter the groups. Now let us understand the syntax of the having clause. Let's start with the select clause. Here we write the column name used for grouping and aggregate functions, that is group function like count, sum, etc. This tells SQL what output we want to see after grouping and filtering. Next is from clause. This simply tells SQL from which table the data should be taken. And guys, without from clause, SQL does not know where the data is. Next is where clause. This clause is optional, which means we may or may not use it. And where clause is used to filter the rows before grouping. So remember this, guys, where works row by row and it is applied before group by clause. And where clause never filter the groups. Next comes the group by clause. This clause is used to group the rows based on a column, and that column name we have to give here. After this step, SQL stops working with rows and starts working with groups. Finally, we have the having clause. Having clause is used to filter the groups created by group by. The condition here is checked group by group, and guys, only the groups that satisfy the condition will appear in the final output. Now let us understand the order of execution. This is very important, guys, because SQL does not execute queries in the same order in which we write them. First, SQL executes the from clause. That is, SQL goes to table and collects all the records. At this stage, there will be no filtering, no grouping. It's just a raw data. Next, SQL executes the where clause if it's used. And where clause works row by row. SQL checks the condition on each row individually and removes the rows that do not satisfy the condition. So guys, where clause is always a row level filter. After filtering the rows, SQL executes the group by clause if it's used. Guys, now please listen carefully. This is very important. Group by works row by row. SQL takes the remaining rows and place them into groups based on the column we mentioned. And guys, once group by is executed, SQL stops dealing with the individual rows and starts dealing with the groups. Next, SQL executes having clause if it's used. Having clause works group by group. Here SQL checks the condition on each group, not on individual rows. So only the groups that satisfy the having condition are selected. Finally, SQL executes the select clause. At this stage, SQL decides what to display in the output. Since grouping is already done, select also works group by group and displays the final result. And guys, please remember this. From clause fetches the data from the table before group by clause, row by row execution, and after group by clause, group by group execution. So guys, that's all for this video. I have posted some important interview questions related to having clause which is pinned in the comment section. Please go through those questions, try to answer them and write your answers in the comment section. This small regular practice will really help you in the interviews and placements. If you found this video helpful, please like the video, share it with your friends who are learning SQL and subscribe to the channel for more such videos. I will see you in the next video where we will discuss example queries using the having clause. Thank you for watching. Happy learning.